So for me, Appalachian was probably a different experience than for most students in that, I mean, for one, if you just look at the numbers, the majority comes to Appalachian from North Carolina or from the Southeast. I'd never heard of Appalachian State. I grew up in upstate New York, and I was the baby of 8 kids, and I lived with my mom. My dad had died when I was a kid, and I lived with my mom in this big old farmhouse that was falling apart and freezing cold. This is bad, we gotta get out of here. And so we had friends from upstate who had moved to Asheville, and we went and visited, and my mom liked it, and then went down to look at schools. And I looked at a few, and Appalachian I just felt at home at. I got this honor scholarship, and I figured if they saw something in me that I should, go there. I was 16 years old, I was a little on the young side, and it was the first time I'd been out on my own, as it is for most people. But I also didn't know anybody. So when I landed there, it was a new universe, and I immediately met and was surrounded by a bunch of great people and very, very good friends. But it was also like learning to be an adult. And it was, for me, it was a great place to learn that because it was kind of like a safe place to do that, It was a place that I got. And to me, that was the key, because I could not have, if I had moved to New York City when I was 16, I would have been chewed up and spat out. I always wanted to make something. I didn't know what it was going to be exactly. It could have been music, could have been writing, could have been TV, but I knew I wanted to. But in order to learn how to do that, you have to be in a place where you're not always looking over your shoulder, where you feel encouragement coming from out, where you feel surrounded by other people who are kind of on the same, have the same desires. So both from students and from professors, that's what I learned. I learned at Appalachian how to make stuff, that it's okay to think, oh, I think I'll make a movie. I think I'll be in a band and try to make a record. I think I'll write books. I believe my major was broadcast journalism. So I'd always liked journalism. My dad had been a newspaper man. I liked the idea of writing always. I'd always written all different kinds of things, but I thought it'd be neat to learn how to make radio and TV. So I, along with a friend of mine named Greg Cuddy, and he was a character, we were into music that was not the most popular music at the time, kind of punk and new wave music. But we were pretty adamant about promoting this music that we saw as being really cool. And part of that was having a radio show on WASU where I was the DJ and would play records by, Elvis Costello and The Clash and whatnot. And so I cluttered the ASU airwaves with a lot of music that I'm sure most people hated, but I had a great time doing it. So, I have to be honest with you, I was not a model student, but I did okay. I graduated on time, I got pretty good grades, but I did not yet fully appreciate my responsibilities as a scholar, let's say, okay? So part of the reason was I was playing in this band that we started in freshman year. So we got together and it was great. We would rehearse in the old music building and we'd get chased out all the time. And so it was just a great adventure. And then the band got serious enough that we got a record deal with Arista and started making our first record. And it was while we were making our first record, this thing that we'd worked for 6 or 7 years toward, that I decided I no longer wanted to be in a rock and roll band. But then after I left, I moved back to New York, and my idea was that I will move to New York City for 6 months to a year maximum. But I'm plainly not going to live in New York City. Who would want to live in New York City? It's a crazy place to live. And I began to realize that there was a lot here for a person like me to want. A lot of smart people who come here to work hard on the things that they really care about, and I cared about writing. So if you want to be a writer for magazines and newspapers, you try to find good stories. You talk to everybody you know to do that. But I figured I could work my way up, and I did, and I wrote everything. I never said no to any assignment for about 3 or 4 years, and I started getting better assignments and started becoming a better writer. And then a couple things I wrote were good enough that they got the attention of an editor at the New York Times magazine who hired me, asked me if I wanted to interview for a position there. I said, "Are you kidding? Yes, of course." My dad was a newspaperman for the Schenectady Gazette and the Albany Times-Union and the Troy Record, all in upstate New York. And they were all good newspapers, but then all of a sudden I was having a chance to work at the New York Times, and it just blew me away. So we're talking today from the very nice facilities of WNYC in Soho. So The radio show is a weird beast. So Freakonomics, we wrote this first book that did way better than we ever dreamed it would do. Then we wrote a second book. I've always loved radio. I loved doing radio at WASU. When I was a kid, I loved listening to radio. It was the connection to the outside world. So I decided, technology being what it is, there really has been a digital revolution. The idea that I can not only produce a radio show for very little money, but I can distribute it now to the public for free. So why don't I just make a radio show? We'll call it a podcast. What's the difference? And then we put it on iTunes, and it was successful. It found an audience immediately. And then we could come to stations like WNYC and partners like American Public Media and say, hey, we made this podcast and it got 1 million downloads. Are you interested in putting it on the radio? Yes, they were. So it was, again, kind of like what I learned at Appalachian about starting a band and getting a record deal. It's like, you got to come up with a plan. A day in my life is nothing to envy. And it depends on what the day is. So I'm going to be writing something. I'm either working on a book, we have a blog, radio scripts. There's all kinds of stuff to be written, researched, thought about. And then there's, recording these days. I spend a lot of time in a radio studio. Fair amount of time working with TV production. My favorite thing is still to sit at a desk with a thesaurus and a dictionary, working on a paragraph and putting the words together in the right way. That's still, to me, the most fun. So I was I was wildly flattered and honored to be told that I'd be the distinguished alum. It's, amazingly thrilling and flattering that I am chosen, right? That's my initial reaction. Then my secondary thought is the kind of statistical one. It's like, wait, how many people go to Appalachian in a given year? And so what are there, roughly 16,000 students all in, right? And you're picking one? And the one is me? It's like, are you sure you worked hard enough to find? So it's thrilling and it's flattering, but at the end of the day, I have to worry that a mistake has been made and that the invitation was supposed to go to somebody else. But, it's too late. By the time you see this video, I'm here. So I'm taking the award and going home, but I'll be back soon.